All right, welcome back to another episode of Trades Talk. And today it's just me and Justin here, and we have some exciting topics to discuss. Justin, how did we figure out these topics that we're going to talk about today?
Hey Maggie, I'm so excited to be back. And as much as I love having guests on, and we're continuing to kind of go back and forth with guests and just you and I love these opportunities where we have a chance to share a little more of what's in our minds. So today we wanted to talk a little bit about unexpected obstacles in your business. So we went to the source of reasoning, governance, and all ideas today, which is Chat GPT and a large language model AI. And we just asked it pretty simply, hey, we're getting ready to do a podcast. What are some of the topics and challenges facing the trades industry today that are unexpected obstacles? And it gave us 6 different topics with questions and everything else that we're going to dive into.
I thought it was really cool. I mean, there's a new feature on it where you can literally just have a conversation with ChatGPT, and I utilize ChatGPT throughout my day all the time, whether it be helping me write something more professionally, brainstorm new ideas, whatever it may be. And Justin, is using it to basically store your vision and your model for K&D. And, then you use it as a sounding board to problem solve. Okay, if I do this, how's it going to impact the business? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So, okay, let's dive into that. So I got Chat GPT 4.0. And so, I'm already forgetting how to talk now because of this software. But no, the cool thing is you can actually have a conversation with it. You can hit a little headphone icon on the bottom right of your app, and it literally will just talk to you. And what's really cool about it is you can have a conversation. It sounds like you're talking to a real person almost perfectly. It stutters, it says really odd, it repeats words sometimes. But what's cool is I can actually tell it my vision, and build upon that vision. So not just here's what I'm planning for the next 10 years, but what are 10 things that could throw us off our trajectory? And as I go forward and I go deeper and deeper into the conversation, the large language model ChatGPT is actually memorizing and then creating this whole model for me, this whole strategy. So right now I can ask it, hey, what's K&D's 10-year plan and the goals associated with that plan? And it will rattle off our exact plan, which is kind of scary in one way. It's like
Hmm.
out there, someone knows it. But at the same time, part of my vision and part of my methodology is to share my vision. So I'm not really secretive about it. But starting in January of 2025, we're going to be announcing a whole new set of goals and metrics and targets and a new vision for K&D. So we're working towards that. And honestly, ChatGPT is going to be a huge part of that.
Yeah, I don't know why people wouldn't use it today. I mean, I think it's a valuable tool. And one of the main topics that was brought up when you asked it for questions for today's episode were literally all of the challenges that we face on a day-to-day basis, whether it be weather or skilled labor shortages or supply chain shortages. I mean, it was just rattling off stuff that, we all know are problems out there, but it's bringing back to the forefront of our mind. So do you want to just dive into some of these questions that it kind of populated for us today?
Yeah, let's do it, Maggie. I'm going to set the table a little bit before we go all in. I want to just kind of go over these
Yeah.
areas that we're going to touch on. And in this podcast, hopefully the value it's going to bring is this big picture thinking for your business and getting ahead, getting proactive before you are faced with an unexpected obstacle. We just are now in this recovery from COVID, and the election cycle is starting to heat up, which is a lot of drama going on there. But we want to be sure that our businesses can sustain whatever impact comes at us, whether it's environmental, economical, or some other random thing like COVID that happened. But here are the areas we're going to talk about. So we're going to start supply chain disruptions, skilled labor shortages, technology integration, client expectation and communication, economic fluctuations, regulatory changes. And the seventh, and I think one of the most impactful today, is weather.
Mhm.
I mean, we're getting blasted with some extreme heat on the West Coast. I was just talking to a colleague of mine who they're dealing with 115-degree heat and they're trying to do enhancements. And they're basically having to start at 4 in the morning. The plants are dying before, like, as the sun comes up. It's really apocalyptic.
Yeah.
And so we're having to really pivot. And then in Texas, they're getting hit with a major hurricane and so on and so forth. So much going on. We want to really talk through these areas. And I just want to set the table there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we can break those up into two categories. And it's those challenges that are within our control, like a result of something that a decision that we made, whether it be, choosing to not use HTV labor or choose where we're choosing to have our business. And then the other side of the coin is, obstacles and challenges that are outside of our control. I don't think that there's anyone that can plan for a worldwide pandemic or a hurricane coming through and just completely wiping out a whole city. So I think that we, at the end of the day, we break them up into those two categories. Like, is this in the control, and can I make pivots in my business to better prepare myself for next time? Or is it something that is just a complete anomaly that's out of my control, and that the controllable in that situation is how I respond to it? So that's how I see this conversation going.
Yeah, I love it. And I love that how you ended that is just it may not be in our control what happens, but it's in our control how we respond.
Right.
And really, I think that is what separates the people who are long lasting and successful versus the people who go out of business and are unsuccessful is really how you react and the quickness and assertiveness that you react to some of
Mhm.
these really difficult challenges. So, Maggie, you want to start at the top and start with supply chain disruptions? Okay, let's
Absolutely.
go in. So, where do you want to start? Do you have any questions for me as a CEO of a landscape company that I can talk specifically to?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing, I mean, you talked a little bit about plants, your extreme weather with the plants dying off, but I think one of the areas that we're seeing a little bit of impact when it comes to supply chain is around like just, irrigation supplies, irrigation parts, with this new water conservation initiative, and overall just trying to understand which there's so many options out there. And when you find something that works for you, whether that be available or not available, what is your take on just overall water management supply chain?
It's constantly changing, and we're recovering from what was a point where you couldn't even get certain drip tubing or plastics a few years ago. We're now to the point where almost everything's readily available, but you still have specifications, specifically in commercial build, where architects will specify something and you quote it. The quoting's pretty easy. You get a price for it, but when you go to order it, you realize, hey, this is actually, it's going to be, it's not in stock. It's going to be 6 to 8 weeks, and
Mhm.
you need it in 2 weeks. So I think what you have to do is really over prepare for your projects when you're going to be installing new equipment or servicing existing equipment. You understand what are you putting in. You plan at least a month, if not 2 months in advance. And I'm thinking bigger projects. If you're just doing one-off
Yeah.
enhancements, this is, you just need to keep stuff in stock. But your bigger projects, it really goes out of communication with the powers to be. So a lot of these commercial projects are actually being regulated by city staff. The city or county staff want to see certain products go in that they saw approved in the
Yes.
initial submittal to city or county staff. So you got to make sure that if you are going to substitute something, you get ahead of the timeline and you substitute it early, get an approval for it early, so then you can go and order the material and put it in. If you're waiting to the last minute and all of a sudden your product's not in stock, the spec, and you have to go and do a resubmittal and get a substitution approved, that may take multiple weeks. That could slow your project down. And if it's an important part like valves, well, you
Mhm.
can't put in drip irrigation if you don't have your valves in. So there's certain things you have to do ahead of time in an irrigation situation to make sure you don't run into that problem. I think the biggest thing is planning ahead and giving yourself an extra buffer time for planning ahead.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things there. So part of the reason I chose irrigation is because it's such an important part of the project. For those who don't know, just plumbing in general, whether it be exterior irrigation, plumbing in a house. I've built a couple houses myself. Not having the pieces needed for that step of the process delays everything. Like right in the middle, I would say, kind of towards the beginning, right in the middle, that you're going to do this part of the project. And when you're doing these large scale construction projects, if that delays you, I mean, you're pushing things months down the line, which is impacting, the business opening or whatnot. And then the other reason I selected it is because I think it leans on the importance of having great relationships with your vendors and also having great technology. So when you're saying being prepared, you can submit out basically a parts list, or you go out to bid to a couple different vendors that you have great relationships with early on, and then have a full picture of what's available by who, by when. it really leans into that preparedness, and then having great vendors who can say, "I don't have this now, but for you, because of our relationship, I'll go find it." I mean,
Yeah.
that level of relationship is super valuable.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, which is vendor relations.
Mhm.
And there's a few methodologies. You can have the one methodology where, hey, we're going to buy from the cheapest place every single time, no matter who it is. Or the other methodology that we embrace is we're going to create strategic partnerships with 2 to 3 players in each sector. Let's just say irrigation. Really, for us, it's Ewing and Site One are 2 people that we really use. And we're going to be loyal to them and we're going to give them a lot of our business. So we do have leverage when there is a situation that they want to help us. They're motivated to help us because it's not just a transactional relationship, there's a much deeper relationship behind the scenes. And when your vendor can pull for you and get creative for you and work a little harder for you, the supply chain issues really start to dissipate. It also depends on your company size. Like one of the reasons I advocate for growth is you have market power,
Mhm.
whether it's buying power to get better prices, or more importantly, in a supply chain shortage, if you're the bigger player in the market, you're going to get preference over material purchasing most of the time. Yeah, it's a free country and a free society, but let's be honest, when you're buying $1 to $2 million a year in material where the competitors are buying maybe $20,000 a year, I mean, your buying power is 50x. There's really no competing there.
Yeah. That's very true, and I think along those vendor relationships and the size of your company, when you are going to bid on these large projects, bringing your vendors in, whether it just be, I know, letters of recommendation or just bringing them to the pre-bid meeting so that they can be involved in the process, that shows the end client, okay, this person is serious. They take the relationship seriously. They're bringing people to the table that will also take my project seriously. And so even if you are a little bit higher in price or what may it be, they know they can depend on you because not only you're showing up for that meeting, the people who support you are as well.
Yeah, and another area that I know is hitting the landscape industry specifically hard is plant availability and plant quality. I mean, our market, thankfully, is growing. We have more landscapes being installed today, significantly more than we did 10 years ago. However, the nursery stock is in such a it's such a delayed market that it is not keeping up with the amount of growth that we're experiencing in our industry. So the quality of, a 2-inch caliper or a 24-inch box tree is gone down. If 5-gallon plants or 10-gallon plants and 15-gallon plants are now becoming smaller and smaller in size.
Yeah.
So architects have the spec they want to see, but the contractors having a hard time A, finding the plants, B, finding the plants at the spec they want to see. So that's
Yeah.
another area you got to prepare for.
Well, and this is a result of COVID, and from
Yes.
someone who has a horticultural degree and who worked in college with, the landscape architects, it was a constant battle that the horticulturists protect the plants and the landscape architects just did the designs. It's a result of COVID, and after with everyone being home during COVID, everyone poured money into enhancements in their house and just beautifying their landscape, wherever it may be. And there was a huge plant shortage about 1 year after COVID in 2021, and nurseries couldn't keep up with the replanting. And so now
Yeah.
when you're looking, that's where the quality issue comes in, is that they were just, doing whatever they could to get anything planted and grown that they could. And now we're seeing the poor quality that came out of a rushed process to meet demand from COVID.
Yeah, it's a tough market. And when we look broadly at the supply chain situation, most everything is caught up since COVID, right? We have
Right.
vehicles and equipment that have caught up. We're still waiting for certain equipment like the, trenchers and the mini bobcats seem to be taking a little longer. But I think it all boils down to having a really strong strategic plan. You know what your revenue is going to be, or at least you're setting your budget and you're forecasting what your revenue is going to be. You're backing that into what equipment you need, what new equipment you're going to need, what equipment you're going to replace, and you're creating a holistic plan around that.
Mhm.
If you're the kind of contractor that shoots from the hip and every week you ask yourself, okay, is this a week we're going to buy a new tractor? And then you go and try to drive down and buy a new tractor that week. It's not a great way to run your business in 2024. And I can't see that being beneficial in the future. So I think if we back up supply chain issues, Just have a good plan, get ahead of it, work with your vendors, and communicate when you're having issues. Communicate early and often.
And I'm gonna add one more thing to that. Know when it's okay to walk away, because if you
Yeah.
can't provide the best quality and the best service and the best, you don't have the parts, you're gonna find yourself scrambling. If you do get that awarded that project, you're gonna find yourself scrambling more and actually probably coming out in the negative on the project, potentially hurting your reputation and quality of work because you took on something that may have fed your ego or fed, your top
Mhm.
line revenue or something, but when you really should have just walked away and recognized that it really wasn't the best project for you.
Yeah, that's a great share. I love it. All right, let's go on to number 2, skilled labor shortage. Man, I feel like we're beating a dead horse and I haven't even started this.
Exactly, beating a dead horse. I mean, we've been talking about this for years and years and years. It's always going to be an issue, and it becomes even more of a hot topic during election years.
Oh my gosh, right? And every conference we go to, there's someone talking about the labor shortage. And I love keynote speakers, but sometimes they're so out of touch with our industry and they
Mhm.
come in and they go, guys, your biggest problem is labor. And we're like, yep, we know. Okay, what else are you going to tell us? And they riff for 15 minutes on why this is a problem and everything else. Look, this is, you just said it. It's always going to be a problem. We're always going to
Mhm.
struggle for skilled labor. It's not going to get better. The best thing you can do is stop looking at this as a giant obstacle and start looking at this as your biggest opportunity. And
Mhm.
I can explain on that. But before I go down that road, what's your take from a technology standpoint? I know you got a take on this, Maggie. What's your take on skilled labor?
Well, my first take is the reason that ChatGPT presented this to us for a topic of discussion is because it's so overly talked about. It's one of those things that it's always going to be there. Like, your mother-in-law is always going to comment on the fingerprints in your house, kind of thing. It's always going to happen. But it's always a topic of discussion. And honestly, I don't think there's a right answer for it. Technology can help. It can help you get better margins on your projects so you can pay your labor more. And that paying people more obviously attracts skilled labor. But at the end of the day, I don't think there's I mean, I may be getting in trouble for saying this, but I don't think there's a solution to the labor shortage. I really don't. I don't think there's one thing that you can put all your cards in and say this is going to solve my labor shortage issue.
I agree. I think people tend to oversimplify running a trades business.
Oh yeah.
Just go mow the lawn, just go fix the plumbing, just go put in a new HVAC system. But there's so much more beyond that. And we're exposing that. We're exposing what's beyond the face value of trades. And what is beyond the face value of trades is these challenges.
Hmm.
So you have to evolve as a CEO and a owner, a manager, a leader in a trades business. You have to evolve from focusing on delivering the service to focusing on delivering the service while managing and utilizing these challenges as opportunities. Because if you can focus and solve your skilled labor shortage problem within your business, you have a massive competitive advantage over the competition who is so focused on installing good product and delivering a good service that they're not spending any time on educational tracks and career paths and training and advancement and attracting better people. They're focused on the quality of the service by such a degree that they're not focusing on these other areas. I think you got to zoom out a little bit when you're running or leading or managing a team.
Yeah, you're of course gonna take the total positive approach on it. I have, the other thing I wanted to talk about when it came to skilled labor is the media and society right now is not helping us. Is not helping the trades when it comes to skilled labor. And what I mean by that is they don't glorify the hardworking jobs. They don't glorify, the getting your hands dirty. They're glorifying being an influencer. They're glorifying, all these jobs that make a quick buck, invest in real estate, which are great things, right? Don't get me wrong, but that's all where all the focus is. That's where the people are going to naturally migrate and work towards. So I think that there is a public eye piece that could help, boost the good things that can come out of working in the trades as a frontline laborer.
Yeah. And I mean, beyond frontline labor is like we are starving for project managers and supervisors and field techs and leaders and even into the HR and finance side, people who understand the trades at a deep level. They're fewer and fewer. And an interesting thing I look at is when I talk to a lot of business owners who are getting to that retirement age, they're looking to transition or sell.
Mhm.
I ask them, well, why? What about your son or daughter? Are they interested? Oh, no, they went to become a doctor or a lawyer or a real estate investor or so and so. But they were encouraged because I think of the movement in our country in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s to go into tech, to go into other areas. And so we not only have this skilled labor issue, we have a massive generational challenge. We have all these baby boomers retiring, and their sons and daughters are having amazingly successful careers because that's where they were pushed. And I think that is going to be maybe one of the biggest challenges we face in the trades is this generational transition from the baby boomers to the millennials and now Gen Zs. There's just not only is there not enough skilled labor, there's not enough ownership and
Right.
people at the leadership level to take the CEO seat and take the owner hat. And that's why private equity is having such a field day with consolidation.
Yeah, I'm nodding my head nonstop. Like literally, that's what the exit gate used to be that the next generation of the family would take over. Now it's we sell it. How much ROI, how much return can I get for selling my business? I saw
That's
that
exactly.
firsthand with the company that I worked for right out of college, large commercial landscaper. They had 4 children. The owner had 4 children. None of them were really truly interested or put the focus in on taking over that business. I mean, a company of that size, it was, roughly 50 to $60 million is a hard business to take over. So don't get me wrong. I don't want to sugarcoat
Yeah.
it. But, I don't want to use the word groomed, but it was almost like none of them wanted to be groomed into taking over that business. And I almost wonder why. Like, because the generation of that would be taken over, they're all my age, they're your age, Justin. And if I could walk in and take over a $60 million landscape company today, I probably would do it. I'm not gonna lie. I'd probably do it. So I'm kind of curious, maybe if they grew up seeing the hard times of it all, or just they just genuinely didn't have interest into it. But ultimately what happened is that company sold. They sold to another large commercial landscape company. And, the owner is sitting pretty. He got his, return on investment, which is great. He should. He worked hard. But it's kind of sad seeing such a family owned business that had been in business for so long, all of a sudden just say, yep, we're done.
Yeah. And I think that's going to always happen. I almost look at the smaller businesses as even more of an issue, right? Because when you're a $1 million revenue business, that's a really hard business to sell. And so I think there's a lot of baby boomers who are kind of handcuffed to their business today because it's not sellable.
Hmm.
They're not big enough. They're not profitable enough. And yet they've kind of depended on this business as their annuity in retirement and they haven't invested a lot because they don't take a paycheck. And so you kind of have this problem where you can't sell, you're not quite big enough, you're not quite profitable enough, you're dealing with this skilled labor shortage, you
Yeah.
don't have the resources to fix it, and you just kind of at one point just give up. And
Yeah.
so I think we got to look out for those guys and people who are leading these companies that are really challenging skilled labor and technology and other areas. And hopefully this podcast can help impact those individuals positively.
What would
I
you
wanted to
tell a
go
owner of
ahead.
that business if you had to tell an owner sitting in your shoes, say that it was your best friend's business and they were experiencing all the problems you just had. What piece of advice would you give them? Where would you have them start?
I can give you a real life example because we look at a lot of businesses to acquire in this 1 to 3 million revenue point. We look for a lot of tuck-ins, and I met with a business last year, late last year, and all their trends were going in the wrong direction. Gross profit, revenue was actually holding steady, which was almost more alarming. But their gross
Mhm.
profit was dropping, their net profit was dropping, their time on site and callbacks were increasing. It was just really negative trends. And the owner was reducing their amount of hours. And his whole pitch was, hey, I only have to work 10 hours a week now. I used to have to work 50. And I go, well, yeah, it shows. Look at these numbers. Like, I don't want to buy a business that is going to be flying off a cliff here in a few months. Like, you've got
Mhm.
a major issue. You've got low liquidity, high debt. There's a lot of issues with this thing, old equipment. So, you know, I gave him the hard feedback, and he, with a this is not a sellable business today. Gave him some pointers. I had talked to him literally last Friday. He called me and we had a really great conversation. And he re-engaged. He hired a GM, which was his son, which is such a cool story.
Wow.
And he's cleaned house a little bit. He let go of a few people who were kind of pulling him down, and they're back up to, almost record profits, record revenue this year, it looks like. And so what I would say is you've really got to analyze who's in charge, like who's running your business. And some owners feel like they've got one or two people and they can start to take more and more time off. But are those people, A, the right people, or were they just the people that were there? And then B, are you empowering them or
Yeah.
are you undermining them?
Yeah.
Because inherently, sorry to say, but if you're not actively trying to empower them, you're most likely undermining them. So those are the two things I would say with in addition to that story is you got to get the right people leading. And then third bonus would be put in EOS or another type of growth system to run your business on some type of system beyond just this is the way we've always done it. So this is the way we do it. Put in a new system. And then of course there's so much more, but
Yeah, I think those are great, great the three things to start from. I was really hoping you were gonna say the empowering side of things because you can hire the right people, but if you don't let them work, if you don't let them succeed and fail and take the highs and lows and celebrate those, oh, I mean, you're going why even hire them? I worked for
yeah, totally.
I worked for an owner who wanted his staff to be the ones who ran everything, but at the end of the day, he didn't let us. And so it was a really interesting situation, and there's a lot of complicated parts to it, but the empowerment piece, I think that is the differentiator from what you're talking about because what you said is this person hired their son to be the GM and they probably put more trust and empowerment in their son they probably than they would have someone who from externally from the outside the company. But I guarantee that that son had a lot more leeway to fail than another hire. So that was
Oh,
with
absolutely.
that.
I think there was also some ownership involved too. I mean, the son looks at it
Yeah,
as their inheritance and they're protecting it where maybe an outside hire, you maybe granting them some equity, even if it's phantom stock, would get them to that ownership mindset. But you gotta have someone who acts like it's theirs.
yeah,
So anyway, I wanted to say one last thing on the labor side, and then let's keep it moving. The way to use this as an opportunity is to become the company of choice for employees.
yes,
So that means A, culture has to be king. You got to have a great culture, a place that's fun to work. B, you've got to pay, and you can't just pay okay. Oh, we pay a little bit more. You got to you got to have the top end of your career path 30 to 40% higher than your competitor. So the people who are tenured, who have been around for more than 10 years or 15 or 20 years, they have an opportunity to make a lot of money working for your business. And there's almost no chance they will leave and get paid more money somewhere else. Now, money is a lot of it, but culture is really, I think, even more important today than finance. Finance has to be there, but if culture's not there and you're just throwing money at your team, you're probably going to have a high turnover.
yeah. Financial stability and like overall compensation package. Some people see it as just what's going in their bank account on a regular basis, and others see it. Am I having to pay for my insurance? Do I get investment in my 401k? All of these other sorts of things. And so I think that if you have a really clean way to explain a full compensation package to someone, not just the money that's on their paycheck, there's no value
Yes.
that you can put to it. I mean, I hire a lot of people outside right out of college, and when I hire them, they don't understand, okay, what does not having to pay for health insurance look like? Okay, why is that important to me? I can still be on my parents' health insurance. What does, you know, getting access to we get a benefit called gym pass where we get to go to a gym for a limited price. And so what if you can quantify all of those pieces of the compensation package to them and say, like, this is what sets us apart. Here's how much money you're actually getting, not just besides going on your paycheck. I think that's a really important piece that the level of understanding that laborers and younger people in general need to wrap their heads around.
Yeah, and you need to give them the ability you need to communicate to them in their language. I
Yeah.
don't just mean like English or Spanish. I just
Yeah.
mean, yeah, if you're talking to someone who's 22 versus someone who's 52, you've got to give them different context around the
Under
offering and benefits.
yes.
That's it. And we need HR people. That's why we renamed HR at K&D to Employee Success Team because I think we need people in the employee success roles who are invested in the success of the employees. Like, why is HR called HR? I don't know, but I hate it. And so I think HR people are just checking boxes. Like, yes, I talked to him about the insurance. Check. Yes, I talked to him about ABC. But it's like, are you communicating with
Yeah.
them or are you just talking and checking a box? And I think we check way too many boxes and we don't spend enough time really deep diving.
Yeah, I think that they would love to have someone that they can lean on as a mentor, like, "Okay, here's my money. What do I do with it?"
So, okay, continuing to move down, technology integration is something that I feel like we've talked a lot about. I don't want to go too deep into this, kind of skim
Yeah.
over, but like technology is constantly like we're using technology to do this podcast right now. Like it's always changing. So, my big takeaway here is just it's more important to stay up to date with what technology is available than it is to just say you're a technology focused company.
Yeah.
Like, I think what's coming down the pipe that you can leverage is a huge differentiator than just doing good with what you have.
I mean, obviously, technology is where I live right now. It's kind of my house, my home. The biggest piece that I would give advice from a technology standpoint is whatever system you're using, make sure that it's cohesive. And I like to use the term Franken system, which is a lot of companies run a Franken system right now. They have all these cool individual pieces, which is great. None of them talk. So you don't have a source of truth anywhere. And so if I had to give advice to anyone who's trying to up level their business, use technology that is cohesive. Don't use bolt on add on software because it's cheaper in different places of your business. Use something that's cohesive. It'll save you a lot of money.
That's great advice. So, we could we could talk about what
Mhm.
happens when your technology goes down.
Ugh,
I mean, that's an unexpected obstacle in this idea, like weather, a hurricane, something comes down, wipes out the Wi-Fi or your power,
yeah.
and you're running on technology. I think you need to play through some scenarios at least, once a year. Hey, what happens if we lose access to our data? I know some friends who run some really super large companies, multi-billion, and they have to run through the idea of what if we get hacked? What if we have ransomware? We aren't able to access our systems. How do we continue to operate our plants? I think that's a good scenario to run down with your team of do we do if our partner or our system is compromised? How do we invoice? How do we dispatch crews? All that stuff.
Well, I think you should ask that at the time of evaluating your partner as well. Because one thing I know, I mean, I can speak to how Aspire is built, and that I know that we have like two subsequent copies basically of Aspire running at different times. So if data in one goes down, we have a backup, and then we have a backup of the backup. And so we can still allow companies to function, but understanding the security protocols, where the data is stored, like, all of those sorts of things, and how your technology supplier functions. How is their technology built? I think that's a piece that people don't understand. When technology goes down, it has a lot to do with how the technology is built. And software built on old technology that hasn't been invested in and like in upkept with, when that goes down, it could be detrimental. But if you're partnering with someone who's constantly investing, I mean, millions of dollars into their product and their database, it's not as detrimental when something happens to that company because they have the resources, the means, the backup supplies, all of those sorts of things. So I think people focus a lot more on like the front end price and the functionality, and all that's important, but also evaluate like the partner as a whole and what they're doing within their business to reinvest in that technology.
You said it so well. There are a lot of great companies out there who do this, who basically will analyze your company for security valuation. Like, how secure is your system? Well, they'll also, and I'm sure Aspire and others do this, they constantly do audits of their system and do, mock attacks to see if they can get through and penetrate
A
to really
hackathon.
a hackathon. Yeah, great. It's part of the culture of technology is the safety, just like we do safety in the field. That information is maybe not completely available, but from a high level, if you're partnering with a new technology, like you're going to onboard Google Suite, like Google will run down what they do and how audited financial or I shouldn't say financial, their cybersecurity threats are.
Mhm.
And you can see for yourself, but it might be worth looking at a cybersecurity company to do a quick audit on your internal systems and just to see how vulnerable are you. And it's probably going to be surprising with how unprotected your company is.
Yeah, agreed.
So I want to kind of jump to this whole weather situation
Yeah.
that is happening because we have fires in the west, we have heat in the west, we have hurricanes in the south. I don't know what's going on up in your neck of the woods, but the
We had
Midwest is all
cicadas
over.
in the Midwest.
Yeah, giant flying bird size bugs. I mean, you guys are always dealing with some kind of crazy thing, whether it's, ice,
Tornadoes or
tornado.
yeah.
Yeah. So
You know,
weather is a big challenge and it's hard to predict. I mean, where do you want to start on this one?
yeah, no, I think it's just I used weather as an example when we were brainstorming for this episode because it is so like prevalent in my mind. We Aspire has some clients in the Caribbean, and so they're seeing a lot of impact from the hurricanes right now. And so
Oh,
it's like kind of like it's always kind of heavy on my heart, especially I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago, I think it was like 2019 when the hurricanes hit Panama City Beach, Florida, pretty bad. I mean, really
yeah.
pretty significant. Last year it was Fort Myers. I know and just like the impact of what companies face when that happens. Companies down there are I guess I wouldn't say they're used to hurricanes because I who's used to something that catastrophic coming and tearing apart their whole world, but they're better equipped for them in the sense that they have their buildings, their structures are built for them and all of those sorts of things. But I think that one of the things that stands out in my mind, and the reason that I wanted to talk about this is when that hurricane hit Panama City Beach back in 2019, we had a client down there, a landscape company down there, and we sent, gift cards and everything for their workers and their family and everything we could do to help them. And I thought it was really unique because they handled the situation so well. Like they stayed calm, they worried about their people first. Like every message we got from them was all of our people are safe. That's what's most important. And I think that something else, I'm going back to this whole vendor relationship side of things, is they weren't afraid to ask for help. They weren't afraid to reach out to us and be like, hey, like, can we pause our subscription? We're going to be down for a little bit. Or they were reaching out to other vendors being like, hey, do you have any supplies that we can, like, our whole shop got wiped out of here. Like all of our plant material got wiped out and everything like that. So they weren't afraid to leverage their networks. And of course, people were willing to help. And I think in a lot of times in extreme situations, we're kind of in panic mode. And I just wanted to credit that company and how they handled everything and how just calm, cool, and collective. And like they're like, we can get through this because we have the great network that we have. And I think in any challenge, whether it be weather related or COVID related or whatnot, like surrounding yourself with the right people to support you and like how you handle those situations really sets you apart. And your words
Yeah.
raises the bar.
Yeah. I think leaders lead.
Yeah.
And when those situations arise, the leaders just naturally ascend.
Yeah.
And whether they're a crew leader or the CEO, I mean, leaders will show themselves in those tough moments. And I think companies will go through the biggest growing pains, but also the biggest growing opportunities when they're faced with absolute disaster and catastrophe,
Mhm.
because it just brings everyone so closely to, that the core mission is survival
Right.
rather than it being profit or client retention or turnover or whatever it is. It's like our core mission is just survive the next week. And then like next Monday, we'll reevaluate if we're still alive and then we'll try to do that again. And we just do that for like a 7-day period for the first few months after a major disaster. And I think that builds the best culture, the best leadership, the best opportunity to kind of rise from the ashes. And you really can't do that without a disaster. Like you can't
Mm-mm.
just automatically rebrand and create a new culture. It's very organic. And when it happens, I've seen it with Chase Mullen and Mullen Landscapes down in Louisiana. And their team is just such a powerful culture. Every time I see their team members, Chase specifically at conferences, like they're so confident and they went through Katrina and that massive disaster. And I think coming back from that and growing back from that is what's changed them and made them into the company they are today. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. Chase is a fantastic leader. One more thing that I want to say along the lines of this is I think that you can never be over prepared for it. And having the like making sure you have the right like insurance coverage ahead of time and the right lawyers in your Rolodex
Mhm.
and like
Yeah.
having the best partners on with you like ahead of time will only set yourself up for success. And so, I mean, I haven't had to deal with business insurance myself. My husband owns a business, so kind of deal with it from that standpoint. But I think at the very minimum, you should be reevaluating your policy yearly to make sure that you have coverage for catastrophic events like this and seeing what's out there and so that way you are covered and your employees are covered if something does happen like this. Because I know firsthand that some of these laborers and supervisors can't survive without having work.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a duty really to provide that and then to pivot in a disaster, whether it's a fire or a hurricane or a flood or whatever. There is a need for labor. And
Mm,
it may not be your trade, right? It may not be electrical or plumbing. It may just be cleanup, like literally just shoveling mud,
mhm,
whatever it is. And I think that's when you have to pivot as a business, work with your local agencies to get approval. Maybe you don't have a certain license to do certain things, but they're usually very flexible in these times. So you
mm,
need to just get involved and look for ways to keep your team working, keep that revenue coming in. It's a win-win for the community, for your employees, and for your business. And you have to just keep moving forward.
right.
So I I think that's a big one. You know, it kind of encompasses this like be prepared, but being prepared is not the only thing that's going to save you. You also have to act with intentionality and act with extreme pace
Mhm.
after one of these big events.
Yeah, and extreme empathy. Like, I think that
Yes.
overall, just, like, remember that we're all humans navigating a really tough situation, whether it be a snowstorm, a blizzard, a wildfire, a hurricane, whatever it may be.
So let's talk a little bit about economics. We're facing constant economic roller coasters and challenges and regulatory changes and Supreme Court decisions. There's so much going on with the president's situation. And what we're facing over the next 6 months is going to be like nothing we've ever faced before. I mean, it's July 8th. We're recording this. Who knows what's going to happen the next 2 months when this goes live? Like, or the next month. It's going to be so hard to predict. But whatever's happening today when you're listening to this, just know that the future is unpredictable and you have to start to build up your economic bandwidth and your cash reserves and everything else to withstand whatever comes next. You know, I don't know. What's your take, Maggie, from this whole idea of uncertain economic fluctuations in future?
I think everyone knows what you just said, right? Like build up your cash reserves and all of these things. I think the issue is it is extremely hard to do that right now. And I'm going to speak from like a personal standpoint. Like right now I have two kids in daycare and I'm working my job and doing what I can, but like to go out to dinner with my family right now, it's $150 minimum. And it's
Yeah.
just compared to in like daycare, $40,000 a year. And so I think that it's hard to build up, cash reserves. And I think that that's something that people don't always acknowledge is yes, building up cash reserves and, saving and investing and doing all these things is the right thing to do right now, but people don't have the money to do it. Plain
Hmm.
and simple. And
Yeah.
and I think that we almost need to acknowledge and support like that's okay. Like do what you need to get by, save where you can. And I think I just at the end of the day, I just hope and pray that things get better.
Yeah, and I think looking for opportunities, it's not all doom and gloom out there. Like, yes, inflation is taking a hit, and this whole idea that inflation is easing is just such a surface analysis because yes, year over year it has become much more mild. Like we're in the twos and threes, but what about the 5 year trend? The
Right.
5 year trend, we're up 30%. So people are saying, oh, inflation's calming or it's cooling, right? We love this inflation cooling. Well, things are still way more expensive than they were 5 years ago. Wages have not kept up.
Right.
Prices have not kept up. Right. So there's a few people out there who are actually making a lot of money, but the vast majority of working class people and business owners are taking home less money today than they were 5 years ago.
Right.
things are getting more expensive than they were 5 years ago, significantly more. And I think what we have to do is realize there are opportunities, but you have to really search for those opportunities
Right.
to make a little bit more money and to go after that promotion at your job or push your company, whether you're the owner or a leader or what have you, to take on a new sector or invent something new. Like I feel like today is the time to be different, to step out of the box and to try to create income in an area that maybe you've never created income in.
Yeah. I mean, 100%. There's I don't want to say like there's no other option, but at the end of the day, there's really no other option. You got to get creative in order to create your income to support your dreams. And the right people will get it done and the rest won't. But at the end of the day, you got to have the mindset. And I think anyone can truly hone in on that mindset that there is opportunity out there. It just matters if you want to work or you don't.
Yeah, it's going to be challenging, but all these things have a common thread in play, and I think the common thread is just be prepared as much as possible, but also expect the unexpected.
Yeah.
And when the unexpected does happen, act with integrity, act with empathy, but act with courage and assertiveness, and don't second guess your gut.
Hmm.
I think our gut instinct is what got you here, and the gut instinct is what's going to get you where you want to go. But if you were constantly second guessing yourself and second guessing those decisions in a time of crisis, you are going to slow down that recovery and slow down that opportunity. And so I
Yeah.
think you have to act with extreme pace too, like just be quick.
Yep. And be humble. I think that for the people who are doing well, right, in a tough time, awesome, congratulations. But I think that you like being humble and staying humble during that time is just gonna take you for like further when things do turn around.
Yeah, be humble. And if you are doing well in difficult times, I think you have a responsibility to the trades industry to grow your
100%.
business, to grow your reach,
Yeah.
and to take whatever's working and scale it.
Yeah.
Now, cautious and be humble about it, right? Don't just grow and now you become, the example, but you want to take what you're doing that's working and spread it to other areas, spread it to other communities. And if you're doing something that's really above and beyond and raising the bar, then you should be growing. You should be scaling and you should be looking for people who are like-minded to join your mission. And that's the future of our industry. People like that. So if you're listening to this and you're doing well, all right, it's time to grow.
For you. Awesome. All right. Well, I think that's a great way to end it.
I do too. I think there's a lot here. Hopefully you guys got some value. We enjoy these. Continue to follow, subscribe, and share.
We'll be around upcoming trade shows. We listed those on our last episode, or we'll continue to list them on the show notes. But yeah, we'll see you guys around
Yeah.
here soon.
Ignite's around the corner. We'll have a booth there. We're going to be doing some trade talk stuff. So hope to see you guys at Aspire Ignite.